John Deere leaves the U.S. not by choice, but by necessity. The company's decision to shift parts of its manufacturing to India and Mexico has stirred debate across the U.S. political landscape and raised concerns among American farmers. What's really happening behind this move? John Deere recently announced plans to invest approximately $100 million to build a new facility and expand its existing operations in Pune, India. The move aims to meet growing demand in the Asian market, particularly in India, where the tractor industry is experiencing rapid growth. In parallel, the company revealed a $55 million investment to establish a new manufacturing plant in Nuevo León, Mexico, slated to begin operations in 2026. The shift of some production lines from the U.S. to Mexico is intended to reduce costs and streamline the supply chain while taking advantage of a large labor pool and Mexico's expanding industrial infrastructure. With a presence in over 130 countries and operations in about 30, John Deere maintains a significant footprint in the United States, operating more than 60 facilities across 16 states and employing over 30,000 workers. In India, the expansion is expected to generate new job opportunities, especially in engineering and manufacturing. Similarly, in Mexico, the investment is anticipated to support regional economic growth in Nuevo León through job creation and increased industrial activity. However, the shift may have implications for employment in key U.S. manufacturing states, like Iowa and Illinois. Rising labor costs in the U.S., including wages and benefits, have challenged the price competitiveness of domestically made equipment. In addition, compliance with environmental and workplace safety regulations adds to the overall cost of production. The aging workforce in American manufacturing presents another concern. Many firms, including John Deere, face difficulties in attracting skilled younger workers, making it harder to sustain or expand domestic operations. In contrast, India and Mexico offer more affordable labor, favorable trade policies, and a robust supply of workers. While these international shifts may help stabilize operations, they also carry the risk of job losses in U.S. factories, potentially affecting incomes and economic security for local communities. At a campaign event in Smithton, Pennsylvania, in September 2024, former President Donald Trump responded to the news by stating he would impose a 200% tariff on John Deere products imported from Mexico if the company proceeds with its production shift. In response, John Deere emphasized that less than 5% of its U.S. sales come from products made in Mexico. The company also reaffirmed its commitment to American manufacturing, citing over $2 billion in investments across U.S. facilities since 2019 and the employment of around 30,000 workers nationwide. John Deere is pursuing a long-term strategy focused on reducing production costs and minimizing tariff exposure, meeting demand in emerging markets, and diversifying its global supply chain. In 2024, the company reduced its workforce by over 2,000 positions at facilities in Iowa and Illinois, citing a decline in market demand. These cuts, combined with rising agricultural equipment prices, may impact the financial stability of small and medium-sized farms. Consumer prices in China have seen the steepest drop since 2009. Millions of workers are losing their jobs. Over 20,000 factories have shut down in just a few months. Meanwhile, Washington has slapped a 145% tariff on Chinese goods. How far will this crisis go, and how should the U.S. prepare? China's economy is spiraling into a prolonged deflationary cycle, marked by falling consumer prices, a collapsing real estate market, and surging public debt. In March 2025, the Consumer Price Index dropped 1.3% year over year, the sharpest decline since 2009. according to China's National Bureau of Statistics real estate, once 25% of GDP, is now dragging the economy down. Giants like Evergrande and Country Garden have gone bankrupt, leaving thousands of projects unfinished. According to Bloomberg, this crisis resembles the 2008 global financial crash, but it's slower moving and potentially more severe. Why? Because of China's opaque financial system and a shrinking population. For Americans, a weaker China might mean cheaper imports, but it also risks supply chain disruptions and reduced demand for U.S. exports. As of April 15, 2025, the U.S. Department of Commerce has imposed punitive tariffs up to 145% on Chinese steel, aluminum, and electric vehicles. According to CNBC, major U.S. firms like Tesla and Caterpillar have canceled orders. Why? Soaring costs and supply chain chaos. The fallout: thousands of Chinese factories have shut down. In Guangdong and Jiangsu alone, more than 20,000 factories have ceased operations since February. According to China Labor Bulletin Chinese media report, millions of workers now face layoffs or unpaid wages. It's a scene reminiscent of the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. For the U.S., these tariffs help protect domestic manufacturers and boost union jobs, but they also raise concerns about rising consumer prices and shortages of imported electronic components and EV parts from China. As the economic crisis deepens, Chinese citizens are bearing the brunt. Countless small businesses are reporting record losses and can't even afford to pay employees. Factories are delaying or slashing wages. Youth unemployment has hit 21.3% among recent college graduates as of March 2025, the highest in a decade, according to China's Ministry of Human Resources. Financial Times. One viral case in Shanghai shows just how bad it is. A young master's degree holder submitted over 8,000 job applications over several months without landing a single offer. It's a stark reminder of the mismatch between academic training and real-world hiring needs. As unemployment rises and household incomes fall, U.S. economists are warning there's a real risk of social unrest in China, and that could shake global markets and rattle investor confidence across emerging Asian economies. In early April 2025, China announced it would suspend all new Boeing aircraft purchases, citing national security concerns. But Chinese leaders are still flying on Boeing 747s during state visits. That contradiction has sparked backlash from U.S. lawmakers, calling it hypocritical, renewing accusations of trade law violations and intellectual property theft. The Biden administration has vowed to tighten WTO enforcement and says if China wants to keep trading with the U.S., it must play fair. Analysts warn, if tensions escalate, the global aviation and tech sectors could face serious disruptions. As the two economic powers remain deeply tied in global supply chains. China unexpectedly halts U.S. beef imports, disrupting $2.5 billion in exports. What's behind the move, and who stands to lose? As of March 16, 2025, China has not renewed import permits for over 300 U.S. beef processing facilities, rendering a significant portion of American beef exports ineligible for entry into the Chinese market. This move follows the United States' decision to impose a 25% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles and related components, and is widely seen as part of Beijing's broader trade response. According to U.S. government data, beef exports to China plunged from an average of 2,000 metric tons per week to just 54 tons in the week ending March 20. China has also imposed additional tariffs of 10% to 15% on U.S. agricultural products, including beef, making American goods less competitive in the Chinese market. In 2024, the U.S. posted a record $8.63 billion in pork exports, with total volume reaching 3.03 million tons. Beef exports contributed 10.5 billion, accounting for roughly 14% of total domestic production. China has played a key role in this growth, representing 14% of U.S. beef export volume and 15% in value, along with 15% of pork volume and 13% of its value. Since March 2025, however, China has levied steep tariffs, 56% on U.S. beef and 81% on pork, further eroding the competitiveness of American meat products and triggering a sharp decline in exports to this vital market. As a result, surplus supply is building up domestically, putting downward pressure on prices. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, wholesale beef prices fell 1.9% in February 2025, while pork prices dropped 6.2% in January, before rebounding 7.9% the following month. While the price decline may benefit American consumers in the short term, with more affordable meat at the grocery store, long-term disruptions in export channels could reduce farm incomes, affect employment in food processing, and impact related agricultural commodities, such as corn and soybeans. In the wake of China's higher tariffs on U.S. beef and pork, Russia has seized the opportunity to strengthen its presence in the Chinese market. Sergei Dankvert, head of Russia's Federal Service for Veterinary and Phytosanitary Surveillance, Roslkosnadzor, stated that Russian meat exports are expected to reach 1 million tons in 2025, up from 860,000 tons in 2024. China, the world's largest consumer and importer of beef, brought in a record 2.87 million tons in 2024. Russia's pricing and quality advantages are positioning it as a key alternative supplier. The expansion of Russian meat exports may also help stabilize domestic Chinese meat prices, especially as beef prices fell by 22% in 2024 due to oversupply. Rising beef imports in China reflect increasing consumer demand, driven by higher incomes and a growing preference for premium meat products. To reduce dependency on a limited number of suppliers, China has broadened the list of approved beef exporters. Recent policy changes have allowed more producers from Australia and Russia to enter the market, while easing restrictions on German beef. Other key suppliers include Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Belarus, and Chile. For Chinese consumers, this diversification helps ensure supply stability and price consistency, meeting the country's growing demand for beef. For the U.S., however, China's strategic pivot in sourcing could lead to prolonged oversupply in the domestic beef market, with potential implications for pricing and agricultural sector stability. Trade tensions between the United States and China are escalating significantly, with a series of countermeasures emerging from Beijing. The question now arises, what will China do next to navigate and potentially reshape the global trade landscape? During the early phase of the U.S.-China trade war, 2018 to 2019, when the Trump administration imposed a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, Beijing expressed strong dissatisfaction. However, as the tariff rate rose to 34%, the language shifted to firm opposition. At the height of tensions, when the United States threatened an additional 50% tariff in response to China's retaliatory measures, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce escalated its tone, no longer limited to stating firm opposition. The ministry described the move as a mistake on top of a mistake, and even used terminology equivalent to extortion, a term rarely employed in official discourse. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, 2024, China has implemented a wide range of large-scale retaliatory measures. At the peak of the tensions, China imposed tariffs as high as 84% on a variety of U.S. imports, including energy products, agricultural goods, and consumer items. In addition, China introduced export restrictions on strategic minerals, among them rare earth elements, which are essential for both technological applications and national defense. A notable example is the TikTok negotiations. After the U.S. government requested that control of TikTok's American operations be transferred to domestic investors, China initially appeared to be in agreement. However, according to the New York Times, April 2025, as trade tensions escalated, Beijing unexpectedly withdrew from the arrangement, leading to a deadlock. According to the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute, 2024, China continues to maintain a significant trade surplus and holds one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, valued at over 1.2 trillion US dollars. In response to the United States raising cumulative tariffs on Chinese goods to 100% within a few months, 2024 to 2025, the Chinese government introduced a direct support package aimed at stabilizing financial markets, as reported by Reuters. Specifically, the People's Bank of China, PBOC, injected credit into enterprises operating in sectors affected by the tariffs. State-owned funds purchased listed shares to curb the sharp decline in the stock market. As a result, China's financial market, which had experienced a steep drop in early April 2025, stabilized and showed modest recovery in the following sessions. China is actively engaging in international forums to promote its image as a stable economic partner that refrains from interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, while upholding the principles of equality, multipolarity, and mutually beneficial cooperation. According to the South China Morning Post, at the Munich Security Conference in February 2025, China's representatives delivered a four-point message: ensure equal treatment among nations, adhere to international law, promote multilateralism, encourage openness, and the sharing of economic benefits. In addition, China is leveraging its stance of non-conditionality, not linking cooperation to human rights, environmental commitments, or institutional reforms, to appeal to developing countries. These nations often face large capital needs, but may be reluctant to accept pressure from Western powers. China is using soft power and its economic strengths to develop a global network of partners, with a strong emphasis on pragmatism and long-term commitment. However, developments in the South China Sea and the Taiwan issue may influence the level of trust China aims to foster on the world stage. The U.S.-China trade dispute has entered one of its most volatile phases, marked by tit-for-tat tariffs, tighter controls on rare earth exports, and growing uncertainty in global supply chains. As economic strategies sharpen on both sides, questions arise over who holds the stronger position in this unfolding standoff. On April 9th, President Donald Trump announced a new 125% tariff on Chinese imports. According to a senior White House official, this figure adds to a previously imposed 20% tariff targeting products linked to the opioid fentanyl, bringing the total effective tariff rate to 145%. The decision followed China's move to impose an 84% tariff on American goods, another sign of intensifying friction between the world's two largest economies. In response, Beijing swiftly announced it would impose a 125% tariff on all U.S. origin goods entering China, effective April 12th. On April 4th, 2025, China formally lodged a complaint with the World Trade Organization, WTO, challenging the U.S. decision to impose an additional 34% tariff on Chinese products, bringing the total rate to approximately 54%. China argues that the U.S. measures violate WTO rules and is urging a rollback of the new tariffs. Under WTO procedures, both parties are expected to enter a 60-day consultation period. Should these discussions fail, China may request the involvement of the WTO's dispute settlement body. Beijing has reiterated its intention to take firm and proportionate steps to safeguard its lawful rights and interests. Chinese authorities emphasize that no party truly benefits from a trade war and called on the U.S. to lift unilateral tariffs and pursue solutions through mutual respect rather than pressure. In a concurrent move, China announced new export controls on 7 critical rare earth elements: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium, and yttrium. These materials are essential in advanced manufacturing sectors, including electric vehicles, defense systems, and consumer electronics. China currently accounts for around 90% of global rare earth production and processing. In light of the new restrictions, several countries and multinational firms have begun seeking alternative sources and investing in non-Chinese rare earth supply chains. At present, the U.S. produces about 12% of the world's rare earth output, primarily from the Mountain Pass mine in California. However, due to limited domestic processing capacity, nearly 2/3 of this output is still sent to China for refinement. To reduce reliance on foreign processing, the U.S. government has launched several key investment initiatives. MP Materials is building a processing facility at Mountain Pass, aimed at supplying rare earth magnets to General Motors by year-end. Linus Rare Earths received $258 million from the U.S. Department of Defense to construct a rare earth refinery in Texas, though the project has faced delays over wastewater management issues. VASI, a German company, secured nearly $100 million from the U.S. government to establish a rare earth magnet manufacturing site in South Carolina. Despite these efforts, several challenges persist. High costs. Building a rare earth facility in the U.S. can cost 3 times as much as in China. Environmental regulations. Stringent permitting and environmental rules have delayed multiple projects. Skilled labor shortage. A lack of domestic expertise in rare earth processing has driven demand for specialized training and international recruitment